If you're thinking of building custom software for your business, but you aren't sure how to communicate what you want to developers, or you aren't even really sure what you want, then this video is for you. And now as a business owner, you probably know your business and your processes like the back of your hand. And for years in software development, there's been this chasm between the people with the business knowledge, aka you, the business owner, and the people with the technical knowledge, aka the developers. And how we cross this chasm is what we call software requirements. And up to this point in time, traditionally in software development, how you communicate those requirements to developers is via what we call tickets. Now a ticket is kind of what it says on the tin. It's just a little card with a title saying sign up page. And then you click on that ticket, and in the ticket, you've got a bunch of mini requirements about it. So on a sign up page, able to sign up with an email and password. If they try and sign up with an email that already exists, they get an error, etc. However, AI has kind of changed the game in this regard because we can now create fully working prototypes that a developer can click through and see the functionality exactly how it's expected to operate. So they're not reliant on reading a ticket and pulling out the functionality that's expected from that ticket. They can actually use the application as it's expected to operate. So that's exactly what we'll cover. I'll break this down into two videos. The first video, so this one will be how you take your processes and you turn those into something that you can give AI so it can create a prototype. And the second video will be the actual prototype creation. So let's dive in. Now, the first step to all this is you need a mapping of the different processes of your business. If you're unsure exactly how to do this, then I created a video on this. It will be on screen here now. And there's a bunch of different ways you can ultimately turn this mapping into hard software requirements. However, the way I traditionally like to do it is I like to take the mapping and I like to break it down into what pages will be required. So I go through it step by step. And as I go through it step by step, I note down those pages as I go. So I go through the whole thing and I break it up that way. And then I ultimately like to root back and then make a final tally of all my pages. Now, in the world of AI, you're probably looking at this whole process diagram and just wanting to chuck it straight at AI and have AI figure everything out. And I've tried this, but the end output, in my opinion, is just never that good because the AI doesn't understand the nuance of each step, which is why I think it makes a ton of sense to do some manual work up front, as we'll do here. And then at the end, we can ultimately give this to AI and have the end output be something of way higher quality because we've done that bit of manual curation up front. So I have this process. I showed it in a previous video, but I've already done this and I want this to be a practical example and one I do on the fly to show you how this works. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get AI to actually generate just a brand new practical process map and in real time work through that. So I'm just going to ask ChatGPT to generate me a realistic mermaid diagram of a practical business process that the business might want to set up software around. Cool, so I've got this back here. So I'm just going to copy everything I got back from GPT. And I traditionally like to do this in a tool called Excalidraw. This is Excalidraw, and they have a nice little generate mermaid to Excalidraw feature here. So I am going to use this. So I'll just paste in what I got from GPT here and insert this. And well, okay. That is a big boy. And so in real time, we can work through this. Now, as I said at the start, I like to break this down into pages. And the other thing I didn't mention is that I also like to break it down into the roles. So usually you're almost always guaranteed to have an admin of some kind. We can start off with that. And for the pages, similarly, you almost always want to have some kind of authentication pages. So for example, sign in, forgot password. And I'll leave out sign up because there's a lot of cases with business apps where you don't want someone to be able to publicly sign up. They need an account created by an admin. So I'll leave that one for now and we can see if we need it as we go through. So first of all, sales rep or customer submits the order. They validate the customer account. So straight away, I can already see that in the database, we're probably going to have customers and orders. And so we'll need pages to handle those. So you can view all your customers, you can view all your orders, and you could go onto the customer page, create a customer, likewise for the orders. So here I'm going to say we need an orders page. And then for this one, we're going to need a customers page so we can view and create customers. Are they an existing customer? If they're not an existing customer, we create an account, collect information. If they are an existing customer, we check account status and payment standing, run a credit check. Okay, so this part will also be handled by the customers page. Because at the end of the day, all we're really doing here is creating a customer and filling in those details. So for the orders page, I'm just going to add a note here to say can create customer during order creation. Credit check gets ran. That will be an automation. So a bit of technical jargon here for API. But if you don't know what an API is, you can just term it automation or auto, whatever it is you want to achieve. And when we ultimately give this to AI, it should be able to figure out how it can set up what we call an API around those automations. So was the credit approved? No, sent to finance for manual review. So if we are sending it to finance, that means we also need a role for finance, because the finance team needs to have their own account so they can review these orders. And as I say this now, the sales rep or the customers need to be able to submit orders. So I missed that one off at the start. Sales reps will need to be a role, and so will customer. And I don't really care about this logic because we don't need a page for it. This logic will happen in the background. All I care about right now is the pages, because you'll see at the very end, I'm just going to give this to AI because I want AI to create a prototype of this. And for it to do that, I just need to pass it a foundation of what the pages should be, basically. And from the diagram, it should be able to use its brain to figure out the logic that should be on those pages. So we'll send to finance for manual review. If finance needs to review this, then this will need to be a page. Let's call it order review. Finance approves override, reject order. We don't need a page for that. Create a sales order. We don't need a page for that. Inventory availability. All items are in stock. We technically don't need a page for this. However, practically speaking, we will need some kind of, probably a products page, where on the products page and in real time, you can see the inventory of whatever product it is. We don't need it for this logic, but again, practically speaking, if a business is using this app, then they will want some way to view this if they need to. Create backorder procurement request, expected within SLA, escalate to sales for customer decision. None of these need pages, and this might seem ultra boring, but I promise at the very end, all we need is the pages to create a good prototype from this. So customer accepts delay, cancel or amend order. If a customer needs to accept the delay, then we need an interface to do this. We can send them an email informing them about the delay, but for them to accept it, they need an interface to actually do this. We can't assume it in the logic. So for this, customers will need some kind of orders page, which we already have the orders page up here. I'm just going to note it down again though, and say for customer, and for the one up here, just so we have it as context, I am going to say for sales rep. The sales rep can then cancel or amend the order. They can do that via the orders page. Reserve inventory, that will be in the logic. We don't need a page. Send orders to warehouse, pick pack, quality check, quality control pass, no, create issue ticket and repick item. Okay, so beside that, we might need an issues page for someone in the fulfillment team. I'm going to put a question mark beside this. We will come back to it. Generate shipping label dispatch. This will be automated. The order statuses will also be on the orders page, so we don't need a new page for that. Update tracking, that will be done on the orders page. Confirm shipment, generate invoices. Again, this will all just be done on the orders page. We don't need a new page for it. Payment received, this will be automations. Trigger collections, dispute raised. Again, this is just all logic that will be in the back end. We don't need to overcomplicate things. We have all the pages we need already. Send reminders, escalate to the account manager, created invoice. Okay, cool. So we have all the pages. I believe the only one we might need is something for the finance team or the account managers related to disputes, but at the same time, we probably don't. I mean, we have a customers page. We also have an orders page. And so if there is a dispute with a customer or an order, we could just handle that on that page in some way, and when it happens we can send a notification to the account manager and they can just go on the orders page or the customers page. So adding a new page might just be a bit overkill. And if the teams do need a way to track the process of, let's call it complaints or disputes, then this issues page probably does make sense. So I'm just going to say for shipping, issues and disputes. And so we may need 2 further roles. So we probably need some kind of warehouse worker role so they can log in and see the orders for fulfillment purposes. And we need one for the account managers, but at the same time, they could be sales reps, but it's better to be more granular with this at the start. So I will say account managers and warehouse staff. Cool. And so that is pretty much it. Now, there's no way we could ever just give what we have now to a developer and they would know what to do with it. However, what we can now do with this is give this to AI and kind of use AI as a nice way to shortcut the work that we haven't done here in documenting every single feature that's needed. Like I said before, in the past, when I've just given an entire flow diagram like this to AI and asked it to document the requirements, it just doesn't have the needed context and it goes overkill in my opinion. However, when we do something like this, where we break it down into the pages with a short little description of certain parts of the pages if it's needed, for me, it does a way better job at creating condensed requirements, and then we can curate those requirements afterwards. So quite literally all I'm going to do right now is I'm going to screenshot this entire flow and give it to ChatGPT. So I've now pasted in those images to GPT, and I'm now going to prompt it to basically say that in the diagram, I've noted down the pages that I think we should include. But if there's any pages you desperately think that I've missed off, then give me a full list back, including those pages that you think I've missed. And then afterwards, once we have the output, we can use these things, our human brains, to figure out if the list is good, curate it, and then go from there. So we have that response back from GPT, and GPT has been GPT and been way too over the top with what it suggests. But we can now curate this and trim it down to just what we need. So I'm going to bring this now into Excalibur, but you can do this in whatever documentation tool you like. So I'm just going to paste this in and we can now review this. So I'm going to get rid of this part at the top, and then let's see with the roles. So admin, sales rep, customer, finance, account manager, warehouse staff, procurement and purchasing, customer support, operations manager, system integrations, service. Okay. So as we go through this, one of the very important things to keep in mind is that this is great. What AI will give us back here isn't necessarily wrong. It's just that sometimes it's over the top and we don't need it. If you're trying to get a software platform out the door, and you may even be paying someone to develop this ultimately, then you want to trim things to the absolute bare minimums to have something that's useful. So here I'm going to make an assumption that we don't need an operations manager role, because this can just fall into the warehouse staff role that we already have. Procurement and purchasing, AI made a good point here. I didn't cater for this, and in truth, procurement probably would need to have some kind of role themselves, so they could go onto some kind of products page and see the inventory so they know what needs to be ordered. Customer support, again, that's a good point. I didn't cater for that. We will need some kind of customer support role. Systems and integration service. I know why technically it's included this, but for this, I'm just going to get rid of this because it's not a true user persona. For authentication, sign in, forgot password, reset password. Yep, that's all true. For the dashboards, it says main dashboard, a sales dashboard, a finance dashboard. Yeah. So for an MVP, I'm just going to say there's a main dashboard. Maybe even when it comes down to it, we scrap the dashboard for the first launch, but at a later date we can figure out what needs to go on this, but it's just a bit over the top to have all these dashboards for a first version. For the orders, these are good. I don't think we need an amend order page because we can do that in the order details. You can just edit the info of the order. Cancel order, again, that can just be a button on the order details page. We don't need that. And this is good, I think. Customers, customer list, customer detail, customer credit profile, customer account status. We don't need an account status page. That can just be on customer details. And so it's then suggested a customer credit profile page, but I just think this is a bit over the top for a first version. The way I think about this, and again, this is all assumptions. This whole thing was just generated by AI. This isn't a real business, but in a practical scenario, would this feature be do or die for the business? I don't necessarily think so, because when they order something, we do a credit check, at that point in time. So do we need this profile in real time? I don't think so. Again, just assumptions. I may be wrong in the real scenario, but assuming that it's not do or die, we can strip this back, so we just have the absolute minimum for launch. Same kind of thing for credit and finance. I get why the AI suggested these, but for each of these, for simplicity for the first version, we could include these in the customer profile. So for example, the credit check results, this could be in the customer details page. The credit review queue, maybe this makes sense as its own page. We'll come back to this one. Finance manual review, this can be on the issues page. Credit approval override, again, customer details, and credit limits management. Again, to me, it makes way more sense to just put it on the customer details page for simplicity. So I'm just going to copy these and I'm going to include it in the customer details, like so. I'll get rid of these. Finance manual review, we do not need it here. We can put it down on the issues page. I'll put this here so I remember it when we come back to it. And same with the credit check results. This can just be on the customer details page. So we can then scrap this section entirely. Now there's a bunch more sections AI has given me, and I'm not going to go through every one because I don't want to bore you to death, but you get the idea of how you can take what AI suggested and curate it to just be whatever the bare minimum is to create a minimum viable product. And I can't emphasize enough the minimum viable. If the feature isn't do or die for your business and your team members, then start with the absolute bare bones, only the truly essential features, And then afterwards, you can build on top of it. Now bear with me, I am going to go through the rest of this list and refine it. Cool, so I've now created everything. So I've got my roles and I've got my pages. And what I can now do with this is I can get AI to create a fully working prototype of this. Now, I wish it was as simple as just giving screenshots of this to AI, but it's never that simple. For example, before recording this video, I tried this out of curiosity with the flow I showed you at the very start. So this one you see here, and I gave it all the pages. This is what it gave back to me. So not exactly the prettiest thing or most user-friendly thing in the world. And I'm sure I could have better structured my prompt to tell AI to break this out into separate pages, improve the features in some way, just at the end of the day, get a better output. But from my experience of using AI to build prototypes, and I mean, even production grade applications for that matter, it works way better when you just do it step by step. So instead of asking to generate 10 pages at once, you start on a page by page basis and first ask it to generate one page, then another page, and so on and so forth. And not only that, but when you give it a template to start from. For me, AI is pretty bad at design, at least if you don't have a taste for design. And in the world of software development, the architecture of the product very much matters. And the nice thing about the internet is we have access to a bunch of different templates online for business applications. So how I like to turn something like this into a fully working prototype is I like to find a template online, get AI to create an app using that template, and then go through that template page by page, because I mean, usually with every template, there's usually some kind of sign-in page. So I can tweak that sign-in page to use whatever branding or terminology I like, and then get AI to add the missing pages, in my case, the orders list and all the other orders pages, to that template. So we basically take the template and spin it into our use case. Why this helps massively is that with these templates, the architecture is usually already set up. So you have the foundation for development, and there's usually some kind of design system set up so that when the AI goes to make an edit, it doesn't just try and rebuild the entire foundations that exist. It takes those existing foundations, like the architecture and the design system, and then he uses it, which is fantastic for scalability if you actually want to take that prototype and not just pass that on to devs, but turn it into a full-scale application. So that is what we will now do. And the tool I'm going to use for this is Cursor. And to set Cursor up and set up the template and all the rest of it, so we have something to build from, it takes quite a bit of time. So I'll separate that into a different video. But don't worry, in that video, we'll go through step by step how you can take what we now have in terms of the requirements and turn that into a fully functioning prototype that your devs can go through and rebuild one-to-one, or you can simply just take it and turn it into an application yourself if that's what you want to do. And that video will be right here.